Asia produce more than half of the world's plastics. And this is coming from China, Japan, and the rest of Asia, Thailand, Indonesia. We cannot quantify enough or calculate, and data not available enough to present how much chemicals, toxic chemicals, are actually incorporated into this and associated to plastic waste. My name is Yuyun Ismawati. I'm from Nexus 3 Foundation. My organization is called Nexus 3 Foundation now, but previously, maybe you know me from the Bali Focus Foundation. We are affiliated to several networks, including Break from Plastic, Gaia, IPEN, and other networks. And in Indonesia, we are also co-founder of the Alliance for Zero Waste Indonesia. Our works are targeting plastic life cycle from the upstream to downstream. And I would like to start from the upstream. Discussions about the global treaty should also address first and foremost the upstream level. We have to cap the production and the extraction of fossil fuel, and also the gasification of coal and all kinds of modifications of coals that will support or provide cheap energy for the plastic industry and petrochemical industry. And we know that in the process, especially when fracking is introduced as the unconventional gas extraction method, hundreds of chemicals being used in fracking. And that immediately contaminated the environment and the communities around the extraction sites. It's tricky because in some countries, the discussions about plastic tax already been around and discussed, but very little attention addressed to taxing the petrochemical industry. That's upstream. As ARIEL already mentioned, and also Hemanta earlier, that Asia produced more than half of the world's plastics. And this is coming from China, Japan, and the rest of Asia, Thailand, Indonesia. Unfortunately, we also are importing a lot of plastic waste, and it's more than half of the global plastic waste, as we know. So this will not be stopped unless we stop the production or reduce the production of plastics and the petrochemical industry. And with this amount, we cannot quantify enough or calculate, and data not available enough to present how much chemicals, toxic chemicals, are actually incorporated into this and associated to plastic waste. In the middle stream, based on our findings and our study, we also found a lot of toxic chemicals, which is some of them already discussed and controlled under the Stockholm Convention, but many of them are still unknown and under research or overlooked, because some chemicals only show their impact after a period of time, after 5 years and so on. If you remember PFAS, dark waters case, you will find it only after 15 years and regulated or prohibited after 20 years. So it's important to curb the impact of plastics to human health and the environment, including at the middle stream stage or during the manufacturing. Some plastics chemicals or plastic additives are already prohibited and controlled, and the new one is coming up. For instance, the UV328, that's widely used in plastic products. PPDEs, BFR, BPA already also controlled under the Stockholm Convention. And within the Basel Convention, the transboundary movement of plastic waste also already addressed some of the cured plastics. And during COVID time, there are a lot of discussions about allowing health PPEs and health equipment still made out of plastics. And these have to be justified. What kind of essential uses that we will still allow the society to use, but also important to identify the non-essential uses, for instance, the single-use plastics, cups and so on, that many countries already agreed to eliminate it, also have to be promoted and advancing. And another important highlight here is the EPR. Many EPR programs do not have legal hook where this money will be allocated to the national budget when the money paid by consumers as a plastic tax or users of plastic bags, it should be a clear pathways and framework how that tax can be reused or redistributed for public purposes. This is the challenge that the EPR applied for manufacturers, probably barcodes that link to the name of the company. That also will be interesting to see as some people already address it and raise the issue. But most importantly, take back deposits, returns, and so on, and need to be more promoted. And some producers or FMCGs already have the refill programs for certain products, but this need to be expanded and pushed more. In the middle stream also, before going to the downstream, we talk about recycling and recycling rate. And also some countries have been identified to have mismanaged of plastic waste. But if we see the dots here, for instance, in the US and in the EU countries, it said that almost 100% or 70% of their waste already managed. But is it really managed in the country or sending it to the red area on the right side? So we have mismanaged waste in developing countries because of lack of finance and lack of enforcement. But this is not only generated from its country, but also I think the burden is coming from the waste trade or exportation, importation cases. So we have to really review the recycling purposes of certain plastic products. At the downstream level, we also found a lot of high concentrations of dioxins and then PPDEs and in the soil and then in the air and in the food chain. This contribute to the release of toxic chemicals. The handle of how developing countries handling this plastic waste contributed to the burden of the environment. And it's important to highlight and identify the non-circular plastic. And some plastics have to be prohibited to be produced since the beginning, like PVC. And then how they can be safely disposed of. Many electronic waste with plastic products containing a lot of harmful chemicals, and this have to be separated from the municipal waste. The export of plastic waste are now changing shapes, as not only in form of solid plastic waste or paper scrap, but now shifting the shape into PEF, RDF, for fuel. So this is a new way to export waste that we have observed in Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, looking from Australia, because the new policy of Australia in addressing or tackling waste export is to convert it into RDF. So this kind of evolution of a strategy also ongoing, and that have to be accommodated in the treaty, because even if country have strategy to address the waste management in their national level, they still have to think further until 2050 and anticipating various evolution of policy and strategies. I would like to recommend many countries, especially in Southeast Asia, to allocate more fund for infrastructures and also monitoring of plastics, as mentioned also by previous speakers, especially on laboratories capacity. Many of these samples that we analyze, we cannot analyze it in Indonesia because of lack of infrastructure. So we have to send the samples abroad. And if we are going to have a stronger treaty, if we want to have a stronger treaty, the capacity in every country also should be increased and improved, including laboratory supports. Thank you for listening and looking forward to have a discussion.